Hey everybody, welcome back to another anime.
Hi guys.
Jesus, welcome back to another episode of my
No,
Anime for
it's
All
Spear.
podcast
It's Spear.
with my host Spear. Sorry for taking a very unexpected hiatus. Intended to come back much sooner. Actually, the break we had was not intended or planned.
Adis never Adis never calls ahead. He just shows up.
Huh?
When I have a hiatus, he never calls ahead. He just shows up.
It wasn't intended or anything like that. And as we were about to come back, I kind of brought up the idea that maybe we should take a little bit longer because we were pretty far behind. So what we're gonna do is, my idea was we're just gonna take certain moments that happen throughout the rest of the episodes we haven't discussed that we thought was important or noteworthy. I've written down some notes here, but before we get to that, I want to just do a brief overview of what we haven't talked about yet. I believe everything of note that happened in these last 6 or 7 episodes we haven't reviewed yet is that
We got the wife being part.
Endeavor stuff won't be happening to another arc story dealing with Dabi, I suppose. But I'm not even gonna. You already made abundantly clear in messages over the course of these episodes of things involving Endeavors just showing up in the episode. I had no idea what was going on. I decided to ignore it. If you haven't noticed.
Oh, you said you didn't know what's going on. So what happened?
No, I'm literally going to ignore everything involving Endeavor because he has nothing really of real importance to add to what's happening right now.
Oh, okay.
But basically, Deku leaves. Deku's in the hospital. Deku leaves to go.
So basically, you're protecting the perpetrator and not the victim. Is that what you're kind of getting at, or? I just want to make sure I understand what you're talking about. It sounds like you are dismissing the crimes of Endeavor.
I never said any of that. I'm just saying, he's trying to improve on himself, and you're not letting it happen, or you don't care because you don't like his character, which you've already made abundantly clear from seasons 1 through now for the last 5 seasons, and including this season.
There was that part where I was right about Endeavor being a wife beater.
I don't think he beat her, if I remember correctly. Because you make it sound like he beat her.
Straight up now. It was straight up.
I don't think he beat her. Did he?
She lost her mind.
Yeah, but it wasn't because of him. It was their son.
Oh, you're going to blame the victim again. Children are the victims of domestic abuse as well.
Did you not see what Toya did? Endeavor tried everything he could just to stop him from hurting himself, and he didn't care.
Yeah.
How are you going to ignore that? That was totally not on Endeavor at that point. Maybe the implanting the idea of being the number 1 in his head, but he tried taking it out of his brain to tell him to live a normal life. I think.
So you think probably Dabi and Todoroki and his wife, they were probably all they grew up in a nice family with a stable father figure, and that's why they are the way they are. That makes sense.
I'm not saying Endeavor was stable, but another thing, you're making it sound like you're excusing. She's not a victim here. She knew she could leave. I firmly believe she could leave. She was not afraid of him.
You are gonna get. If anybody even begins
tell me how she was afraid of him. What part of everything that happened with that family? Sorry, I'm getting heated about this, but tell me whatever happened with that family. What made you think she was afraid of him? I don't believe she was afraid of him. I don't believe 1 second she was afraid of him.
And she was she didn't have a job, and he's a superhero celebrity.
She's from a family with money.
She's afraid to leave.
She's from a family with money.
Celebrity, and she's worried.
She's from a family with money.
She's going to meet. Well, yeah. Well, maybe her family with money doesn't want to be shamed. Maybe they care about their family name, and they're putting pressure on her because it's not American society, and maybe she doesn't want to shame her family's name, and maybe she doesn't feel like they'd support her. But what we do know is that he's a large, aggressive celebrity that's hit her and can set himself on fire without being hurt. So it seems to me that perhaps
she's not afraid of him. Plus, she could literally pull out his flame. This is actually kind of evident. She can do a lot of that crap. She's not afraid of him.
She's probably as strong as the #1 hero for sure. Yeah.
This is not about her being stronger than him physically. She could literally put out his flame.
You think they talked dirty to each other while he was breeding her?
This is why I don't like. You're joking, but this is actually irritating me. Just like legitimately, you're joking, but this is actually irritating me.
Why is it irritating?
I want to move on to like the episode. I just want to do an overview before you talk about certain moments in the anime. Deku leaves the hospital after being told that he probably should rest a little bit. He ends up pretty much the last bit of this arc is actually showing Deku using his abilities, getting used to them, while also cleaning up a mess that All For One managed to set in motion from inside his cell with Shigaraki on the outside. That's where Shigaraki is unconscious. And also they mentioned apparently he's gonna heal up early. He's gonna heal up much faster than anticipated. But that math didn't really add up to me with the amount of days that they were talking about. I guess it was like planted information. It wasn't real information. Generally, Deku tries to go after All For One is kind of almost
Todoroki
successful.
gets a little bit. I'm sorry. You mean Todoroki or Shigaraki? Oh yeah, Shigaraki's going to heal much sooner than expected. That's what you mean, right? We
Yes.
find that out almost in the last episode. I'm sorry, it threw me off for a second that you were skipping that far ahead. Okay.
I'm bouncing back and forth. I'm just saying, like, in a basic overview. I mean, as I was talking about, I just remembered that Shigaraki is a part of this. I completely forgot about that. Shigaraki is healing in the background. All For One is also healing in the background, making threats from the shadows. Pretty much this entire thing is just about Deku coming to terms with everything that's been thrust upon him. We already kind of knew this, but you find out he's trying to protect everybody by leaving UA. Kind of culminates with Class 1A all coming to stop him from leaving. I mean, that's just a part of my notes here, but I will say that I feel like that entire like Class 1A versus Deku, how they stop him was almost very Deku-like. It almost seems like to me it seemed like something he would have incorporated if somebody else was trying to leave using all the abilities that they had.
I think that's what the writers are doing on purpose. They're showing how he paid off with what he was doing. Like that was a payoff scene for what was going on. He was like, he finally got to see the impact that everything had, that he's been doing, because he could see how his like actions had impacted how their lives and everything else. Like they came around and said like every single one of them wanted to say how he changed them, you know. So of course it's Deku like he caused it to come about.
Oh, and I guess one more thing, the final major impactful scene that they showed last episode is Miss America. Sorry, the #1 hero from the USA, from United States of America, is coming to help All Might.
She was ridiculously over the top.
She was buff. I was like, what the heck?
She was so over the top, and I'm sure they intended for her to be, but like, good golly, Miss Molly, like she's like.
She looked like a female All Might if that's what they were really going for. That's what she reminded me.
They were absolutely going for a female All Might. She needed like a separate flag for each like chest plate there.
Oh dear. I don't know, like that was Stars and Stripes is what the heck.
It's funny too because like it's such a ripoff of names. There's a DC team called Star and Stripe. Like there's two heroes in the DC universe that are called Star and Stripe, and she's Stars and Stripes. I mean, I'm sure that all the patriotic names have probably been pretty much taken up at that point, but I found it kind of amusing, like just how incredibly generic it was.
I think she's just supposed to be I mean, like you say, she's like obviously a ripoff of everything American, but like based on the way that she's very impulsive. Apparently, her representative couldn't even keep her from going across the way to go out help All Might. Apparently, I think there's an Egyptian hero who we don't know much about, but apparently All Might has a lot of hero like superhero powers apparently overseas that we don't know about.
Yeah, well, that's this is another step of them expanding the universe, because the My Hero Academia universe keeps expanding. Um, they started and it was just All Might, Deku and Bakugo pretty much, and then he joins the university. He meets his class, and then he meets the other grades, and then he meets a parallel slash rival university, and then you start the same thing with the enemies. Like you see one or two enemies, and then like it expands out to the League of Villains, and then the League of Villains has some peer places that you see, and then you see the giant League of Villains, and then there's like a countrywide fight. But every single time they increase the scale. Like at one point, it was just like it was a big deal when they raided the university, and you're like, oh my god, this is serious stuff. They like raided the whole university at this point. And then you realize that's not even like the beginning of it. You know what I mean? Like then they raid the whole country. You know what I mean? And then now they're expanding out beyond that to like do sort of a multinational thing. And like you start wondering like what's the next thing? Timelines, dimensions? You know what I mean? Like where do they go from here if they don't end the story? And I know they're about to, but like they're running out of directions to go out unless they go into space, time, or dimensions.
I don't think they're gonna go that way, but I think to wrap up everything that we just talked about, at least with the universe, I honestly think this place is ripe for fanfic. The show this it's gonna end, but I'm pretty sure all the creators really done here is he's made the world ripe for fan fiction.
Absolutely.
And I've been victim to that apparently a little bit with some things I thought about within his world. I don't know where to place this character I've made up in that world, but like it's one of those like this place is right for it, and I realized this like a month or so ago. I was like, this world is just right for fanfic. Like once he's done, like people could literally carry on. This isn't like Naruto, Bleach, One Piece. Though I think One Piece is probably right for fanfic, but like there's not a lot of animes that like are ripe for it. Like people do make fan fiction of other shows regardless, but there isn't a lot of shows out there that have the like it just makes sense to make fan fiction. Like this show, it just has like it literally is like he laid the foundation. People can do what they want with it once he's done. I mean, the main reason why he said he's stopping is because he can't keep on like drawing these characters, even though he is on a hiatus. I think he's been on a hiatus for maybe a month or so. The manga is supposed to have ended by sometime this year, but it might go out to like next year. Who knows? His health is like apparently he needs to take a break for his health. So I don't know when they're gonna start season 7. If they're even gonna do it this year. I mean they probably could, but just animate all the way up to the last arc. And just say that we'll take a break until it's done and we'll come back and animate it all all at once. Well, not all at once, but animate it once it's done, so that we can send the show off on a high note, which is possible. Apparently this animation company has been known to do a really good job. They've done a lot of shows I've actually watched, and I didn't really realize it, but looking on animation, I'm like, oh, they definitely did some of the shows. Like I really loved Soul Eater. For people who aren't familiar, this company worked on Soul Eater.
Company?
Hmm?
What's the company's name?
Studio Bones, I believe, is the name of the company.
Okay.
They worked on.
Madhouse keeps coming up for me. I keep seeing Madhouse show up. Like when I like an anime, and then I find out it was meant by Madhouse.
I mean, hold on, before I just in case, I thought it was Studio Bones, but it's possible that I'm wrong. So I'm correct. Studio Bones, yep. And just I guess a good example, I have all the things they worked on. Some stuff I never even heard of. They worked on Fullmetal Alchemist, that's a good one. They worked on Brotherhood apparently. Apparently when Brotherhood was like Fullmetal Alchemist was still going on, they when it got near the end, because there was a time when anime, for people who don't know, the newer generation who are getting into anime. For people who don't know, there was a dark time in anime history where a lot of times the show would animate content, canon content, and once they run out of that canon content, they had to wait for the original creator to make more story. So to keep the hype, they would the animation studio would make filler. Now, a lot of times there's a huge debate whether filler is a good thing or a bad thing. Uh, Leave it to everybody in their own mind. For some people, I think Dragon Ball Z is a good example of just lots and lots of filler. But I think it added it to that world because there wasn't really much to that world to begin with.
I liked the filler too. I actually missed as much as I was annoyed with the filler when I watched it. It's aged well with me as like Dragon Ball Z, as I moved beyond it, and I missed it in Super. Like I missed the plot development and what filler would add to the show. I felt like it felt rushed without a little bit of filler.
I could take it or leave it with some shows. There's actually a show.
There's some really memorable filler, like in Dragon Ball, like the driving episode. Like.
I mean, when people talk about filler, that's all they really ever mention is that, and I don't know if Garlic Jr. is really considered filler, because Garlic Jr.'s existence is really weird.
Jr. is the series that I started watching it on, but like I don't know, like even movies, non-canon pieces like the movies, like many of those, like Broly was extremely famous and one of the most famous villains, and he was non-canon. I won't go so as far as to say filler, but a lot of those movies felt like filler to me.
I mean, I think they were. So, like I said before, filler was made to extend the life of the show whilst the initial creator was working on more story. Dragon Ball Z was famous for using it.
I think in general, the movies were to hype up the basic plot line of whatever series was coming next. So you would see, like, for example, Janemba was sort of like playing with the concept of a character that could shape change and had like world-breaking abilities, and then they went right into the Buu saga. A lot of times the filler was like, I mean, the movies were like kind of a parallel universe hype to get people warmed up to the content they were going to introduce in the next section.
Yeah, I know. I just what I was gonna say. Some shows really do work well with filler. Another famous example you don't know about. I don't think you know about. Bleach, for instance, the show about Soul Reapers and everything. Bleach actually had a problem, and it was not only the fact that the anime got caught up so quickly to the initial reading material. What happened is the filler was a million times better than the initial content was in the show. There's something called the Zanpakuto Rebellion arc that went on for a long time, and the worst part was it was probably better story-wise than anything that came after.
Oh yeah.
And that stuck with me because I get really upset by that. For me, it was like, why is the filler content better than the initial story? And people probably would argue over if that was better.
Super was starving for some storyline. Like, they had cool fight scenes, and like, I enjoyed the animation, but like, and it wasn't until the final set with the Universal Tournament or the Multi-Dimensional Tournament or whatever they called it, like, that I really felt like there was a storyline I could get into. But that was partially because they brought in all the old characters. You know what I mean? Like, you got to have a last hurrah with Tien and Roshi, and you know what I mean, characters that they were doing nothing with. So it wasn't just the Goku and Vegeta show for a little bit, But like, I don't know. Even like the most famous, other than that, like the most famous Super was, excuse me. The most famous Super after that was the Dark Goku one with what's his name? The Supreme Kai guy, the Supreme Kai, whatever. Well, anyway, he there was huge plot holes in there, like the fact that everybody dies. Like they introduce you to all these characters, like alternate universe versions of everybody, and then they just all die at the end.
I mean, they kind of save them with the.
No,
I forgot the name of that little guy.
the whole universe was erased.
No, but
So,
like
like,
they reversed the. Wait, no, are you talking about the universe that Trunks and Mai came from? I mean, future
Yeah.
Trunks and future Mai. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, everybody died.
I guess not really, because he sent him back in time before all that happened.
Who?
I forgot his name. The little guy, the little god guy. He was apparently really strong. That Goku befriended.
Zeno?
I forgot his name. He was
Zeno?
apparently he's stronger than the angels. Shoot.
Zeno?
Yeah, Zeno. He sent
I
him.
said
He
it
destroyed
4
that,
times.
but he also sent him back. He kind of sent him back for them to hide in the timeline. They can't interact with the Trunks and Mai that are there, but they can live however they want. So
Dude, I don't remember that at all.
it's something that happens in the very last episode of that entire thing. I only really remember it because like it's in the deep crevices of my brain that so there's stuff happening in Dragon Ball Super, the manga right now, that is it's like it just reminds me of it, and I'm very kind of uncomfortable that they're pushing the Mai and Trunks thing. The Mai and Trunks that we're used to. Considering Mai is supposed to be in her 80s or whatever her age was before she became a kid again, but it's just
Right.
I'm looking at they worked on Mob Psycho. Some people know what that is. I didn't know they did that. The animation style doesn't really work for me. Dragon Pilot, I'm not sure what that is. Space Dandy, Soul Eater, as I said before, Noragami, Space Dandy, Tenkai Nice for anybody who knows what that is.
Your point stands strong though. Like this is a series that's really good for fan fiction. They've almost been like wasteful with the universe because the characters in My Hero are so likable. Like even the villains are like so generally so compelling, and like all like just the right amount of like bright and gray, and the neutral characters, you know, there's some good, some bad characters are all over the place, and you really get to like explore everything about it, and they don't forget characters and completely abandon them. Like, you know what I mean? I'm watching the fight with Muscular right now, and it's like it's like sad how much Deku like owns him now. But like the you see like so many things, like characters come and go, and they're so powerful, and like the ones that are defeated stay relevant through things like the search ability that, you know, that All For One like ends up using later on from the Bunny Hero and stuff like that. Like they do a really good job of that, and it makes you like hungry for more of these characters. And then they just kind of like the creator of the series is so inspired that like he doesn't have to like milk it, like he can just keep going with them, and I think that's super cool.
I mean, there's only so much you can do. He already has a story going in motion, and again, it's already I kind of only read about him saying that, you know, he can only draw these characters for so long. I guess that makes sense. Like, he can only keep his characters going for so long. I guess it kind of makes sense. He already made another side series apparently that was going along with this series, doing the Vigilantes, and that ended some time ago. People still want that to be animated, and maybe when Bones is done, maybe they can get the rights to do that. I have no idea. I only read a little bit of that side story, and the little bit that I did read, it starts off slow. I think it's actually kind of something interesting to read, to go through, because it just shows the side of the world that we don't see, which I guess I have Nagant down here on my list of like things I want to talk about, but she's like 1, 2, 3, 4 down, like below a couple of things. We already talked about Class A and Deku, so I won't milk that. I guess last thing I will say about that situation is I really enjoyed that entire event. I was caught off guard by a lot of what happened, and especially Ida being in the middle of that acid thing. I didn't expect Ida to just come out of nowhere and him be the one to capture Deku before he leaves, and then the flashback to Ida being stopped by Deku back when Stain, which we'll talk about a little bit later about Stain, but back when he was going rogue to stop Stain.
And what they've learned in the series so far, but it's also a testament to how far Deku's power is. Like, if Deku had gotten away from that last thing, then he would have gotten away. Everybody that could have been used was used at that point. So, like, it took all that the rest of Class A had combined just to catch him. You know,
well, Deku was tired by that point.
In exhausted state. Exactly.
I think if it wasn't for Deku being tired, he probably could have gotten away.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like, but it's also like their teamwork was incredible, and it like showed like so much showed the fruits of the labor of like them being taught and becoming more experienced along the way. It was like, it was a really good payoff of a lot of things. Like, you got to see the payoff of how powerful Deku's become. You got to see the payoff of like how far they had grown, even though it wasn't like at the same pace as him. Like, all of them combined could still keep up a little bit with Deku, you know? And you got to see just a lot of really cool things there, like the creativity, like the experience, the planning ahead, like the fact that they like were able to work together, and but also like every single one of them had like a little final love note to Deku at the end of the series, where they got to say, like, he left them all a note, and then they all got their note back. You know what I mean? Like, and it was a really good payoff on that concept, that like they each got to respond to the note that he left them.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very. I actually got almost teared up a little bit, because it was very montagey, almost like, if we don't get a chance to animate season 7, we're gonna really leave you guys with a tearjerker at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad they got a chance to animate season 7. But I guess
like, just in case, like, if you break out of the fourth wall, it's a good just in case that like you got to see where he stood with everybody.
So
and then he actually goes back to UA, like, you get to see more people have their final word with him that he didn't necessarily say goodbye to, and like the normies and stuff like that, the woman he saved and stuff, you know, from the city and stuff like that, like a bunch of his mom, you know, you get to see all
his
those
poor mother
come back.
I keep saying that,
yeah.
But I keep saying that. I think I've said that almost every podcast we talked about Deku's mother. I still stand by it. His poor mom. And then to find out that he was quirkless but got a new power from his idol is like, that would only put him in more trouble. Like, I'm pretty sure this woman, when Hideku's finally, you know, able to say he is here, she'll just probably die. I mean, she'll die happy, but she'll probably pass away. I'm pretty sure she's aged several years just dealing with this kid.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they're saving who his father is for like some really good storyline?
No, I don't even think it's important. I don't think it's important who his father is. And I say this not because I know, but because I had the strange suspicion that if his father was important for anything, they would have mentioned him way more than they have. Now they get to surprise me. You know, shoot, I'm all for surprises. His father's supposed to be somewhere overseas. I don't know where he's supposed to be. Apparently he has a flamethrower quirk, which is really weird, but that's all we ever know about him. They don't bother even using his name. They don't even bother. Deku doesn't even mention him. It's almost like Deku never knew his father. It's almost like his father left him as soon as he was born to do something overseas. I don't know. It's evident that he doesn't know who his father is, or like cares much.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't talk about him for sure.
But I think if he had brought him up, it would have. I mean, this entire arc where Deku left, they could have easily had it like maybe like if it didn't work, like when he got back to UA, when the people were all like mobbing on him, he probably could have tried leaving there, and then his father could have showed up to, you know, say that it's all right. That would have been an interesting point to have his father show up, but they chose not to, and they used other characters that made more sense. So like, I don't know. I mean, do I want to see his father? Heck yeah. But I don't know what importance his father would really have, other than, hey, I'm the main character's dad. I'm a jerk.
If nothing else, that would be a really good premise for a fan fiction. But it could turn out to be somebody really surprising too. Like they could try to make him a descendant of one of the previous All Mights or something like that.
Well, I think we already accounted for all the previous users, and none of them looked like Deku.
We don't exactly know their lineage though.
Hmm?
We don't exactly know their lineage, but sure.
But none of them look like, even remotely, even like anybody. Well, I mean, All Might has said that number 7 looks like his mother. But we already confirmed that. I don't think there's anybody in their family that even is related to Deku.
I mean, Shigaraki doesn't look like number 6. All Might's mentor. Shigaraki doesn't look anything like All Might's mentor.
Well, he's her grandson, so there's probably a reason.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, he could be anybody's grandson and not in the universe not look a ton like that.
I guess, but I feel like that'd be a cheap way to connect him to anybody in there.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I mean, not to saying that, you know, I wouldn't be happy with it. At the same time, it's kind of the whole, like, every show does that where, like, for whatever reason, the main character is a descendant of somebody else. And it explains their overpowerness by the end of the show. I mean, no, hey, I mean, if that's what he wants to do, that's what he wants to do. Before we go in further, what I also want to talk about, Uraraka is somebody I want to talk about actually in depth here, but I'm gonna wait and talk about Nagant real quick.
Okay.
Nagant, basically what I want to say with Nagant, it's interesting, her connection to Hawks, and then her connection to the underworld of the Hero Society. And this kind of specifically, I didn't even intend this, plan this after when you said like the world is, we learn more about the world here and expands. Nagant's a pretty interesting way to expand upon the world, because we kind of already got that expanded upon with Hawks and how he got recruited to where he was, but they don't truly explain who the heck recruited Hawks or for what purpose. But we get that explanation with Nagant's backstory, and a hero that was used to clean up the evil that they didn't want to send the top heroes for. And she cleaned up a lot of the messes. She killed pretty much for an underground society that wants to keep all crime, even the possibility of crime, from happening. And it kind of shows that, like, heroes are just humans. They can be corrupted, they can be messed up, you know, made crazy from even the smallest repetitive action. Like, Nagant got messed up just from killing people who didn't do anything yet, or could have possibly done something. She wanted to be a hero from a young age, but instead got recruited to do something, to be a hero, to be an underground hero. They didn't get any real accolades for what she did. And it you know, it made her crazy, and they just sent her to jail because she defected. Mm-hmm. And it gets to your whole point about Deku's, you know, influence, just by being in combat with Deku and learning even just a tiny bit about him, not even learning a lot about him, just like finding out that, you know, Deku was not only able to stop her, but he was able to save her, only for her to get blown up because of some sneaky, if you break this clause contract inside All For One's little, I'm gonna give you the ability to float.
For One knew that was the way it was going to go down, though he planned out the whole time.
I mean, yeah, obviously, but I understand it just like Nagant had no way of knowing that, and nor did she care. You know, she wanted to take down the Hero Society from the under. She wanted to rip the rug underneath, and, you know, bring down the wall. But
it was very It was very Stain-like. It had that anti-hero that kills heroes. It was a very not unlike a female Stain, but it was also a throwback. Like they were kind of modeling the to some extent, other along with being sort of a Stain, they were also kind of modeling the Shigaraki all for one kind of situation there, because they were kind of prepping you with like a mini story that like kind of reflects it, where you have someone fallen but ultimately has the potential for good, that has met with the hero. And we know from the past that there's a long history of Goku, I mean Deku, making the people he fights with his friends and transforming enemies into heroes, because that's what Goku, I mean Deku, does. And we see that ultimately the character was sort of in a hostage situation where he wants to save Shigaraki slash Nagant, but there's a power that has the person's life in his hands, in both cases being All for One, who seems at leisure to destroy them if Deku wins, creating a lose-lose situation where Deku either just straight up loses, or there's a morale loss from like him succeeding in saving them but then dying anyway. So it's very bittersweet, but it also feels like almost like they're bringing up these questions to prepare you for when the same thing happens with Shigaraki.
I didn't even think of an connection with Shigaraki.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he could definitely blow him up. I mean, he's been grooming him for years. I didn't even think about that, but Nagant's story is very. I mean, it's not like anything else we've seen in the show. You know, somebody who was used and then since they were no longer useful, they were thrown underneath the bus, saying they did these types of things. We need to lock them up because they're afraid of what they're going to do to the world once they're out there. Again, I felt
Well,
really.
there's the Hawks parallel.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, the Hawks. I mean, we already knew something was going on because the way Hawks was recruited. We saw this when he was first introduced, and we saw this in the flashbacks. And it's kind of funny because she's like, "How did you still got light in your eyes? How did you still keep that?" He flashes back to the Endeavor doll that he got randomly one day, because even though he wanted an All Might doll. The irony in that situation. And he's like he had people in his life. He looks to Endeavor, but he also kind of looks to Deku a little bit too. After meeting him, saying that there are people that kept him above water and kept him in a I guess in a like dreamlike state where he was capable of still dreaming, even though his position in society is unfortunately not the greatest. I kind of want to say, I guess I'm gonna want to amend this now too. I remember when they first introduced Hawks, and I didn't understand, or just didn't understand his character at all. I didn't like I just something about everything about what he was supposed to be doing there. I kind of after this whole thing and thinking about it after a couple weeks now, I actually kind of like Hawks a little bit more now than I did before. He his double agentness didn't exactly hurt him, but you think it would, but it didn't. At least in a moral way. I mean, he had his wings plucked, but to me, as as a character, his entire evolution as a character kind of like got improved, and he actually sat on the side, which is something he definitely didn't do leading up to now. He kind of wanted to ride the middle. And he didn't want to pick a side, but it sounds like he's picked one now. And it's cool that he's chosen to fight with Deku. It's kind of like what Nagant did, after everything after what Hawk said to her, she just gave up the information that All for One told her, which because they're going to be meeting someplace within 3 months. But now we know that kind of information that they kind of planted it might just be a lie. We don't even know how true that is anymore. They could have easily said that just because they were expecting somebody to fail. But being Nagant's an interesting character. It's kind of sad that I guess her usefulness to the story is kind of done. I mean, unless she comes back to help. I mean, which is possible because she's still barely alive. The explosion made it sound like she died, but no, she was still alive after it.
And she's a charred husk, just like, you know, Shigaraki. Again, there's a really cool parallel there between the two of them. Like, I do feel like, I mean, now that I thought of Hawks, like, she's an amalgamation of 3 different story formulas, and she's a really appropriate little side story given all of that stuff. But I do feel like we're sort of being walked through a review of the storylines to prepare us to really absorb well what's going to happen next, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what they're gonna do. I mean, if what you're saying is true, which I mean, I see the similarities, so I just don't know if that's what they're gonna do. I mean, anybody can say this is what they're gonna do, but then they do a freaking 180. It's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I guess I'm saying I don't have expectations, but I mean that's what happens. It happens, and you saw it coming a mile away. Though based on everything that's happened right now, it could easily be. I mean, I guess Shigaraki could still be changed. I mean, half the reason why he's the way he is because he never got help. He was looking for help, and we saw that in his backstory. He was looking for help, but the society that was being protected by the heroes didn't even give him a second look or glance. An old lady ran away from him because he was dirty. Just really messed up. But yeah, I guess that's the gun story. I guess so. Before we're gonna move on to the Uraraka speech, and I'll probably also, you know, move straight into the Bakugo apology, but we're going to start with the Uraraka speech. After UA manages, well, Class 1A manages to bring Deku, you know, bring him down, and you know, make it so he can't leave. You know, say their spill. I want to bring this up too. This is gonna come up. But I remember some time ago, I don't even know what season it was even brought up, but it was one of the episodes that involved Uraraka and why she wanted to be a hero. She brings up an interesting question that I thought was kind of dumb at the time, but looking at it now, it kind of made more sense. She was kind of foreshadowing this moment, and also foreshadowing just in general, I guess, an interesting question that has never been asked. She mentions that as a kid, she always looked at the hero's face, and sometimes they were smiling, and sometimes they weren't. She mentions like who would be there to help the heroes whenever they needed it, and I always thought it was a kind of weird question to ask because it didn't make any sense to me at the time. But what she does here actually kind of makes that question make more sense, and it's a valid question actually. Heroes are there to protect the civilians, but who's there to protect the heroes when they need it? Now, honestly, you probably think that wouldn't be a question to bring up.
Who guards the guardians? It's a very common phrase in Latin. I forget what it is, but who guards the guardians is a very ancient Latin phrase.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know there was actually something. Okay, thank you for letting me know. But yeah, I remember when she brought that up several seasons ago. I thought that was a dumb question.
Custodes.
Oh, was that Latin?
He's custodius ipsos custodes. There's even a Wikipedia article on it.
There's even a Wikipedia. Sorry, we used Wiki. I couldn't.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry. Sorry.
I'll throw the link in the Discord for you to check it out. But it comes up every once in a while in superhero cartoons because, like, for example, in the Justice League animated series, do you remember that?
I mean, I remember the animated series, but I don't remember this question even being brought up. Okay.
In episode 1 of the Justice League animated series, there's a scene where they try to bring Green Lantern in, and he doesn't have superpowers, and he talks to them, and he's like, you guys, like, you know, he's like, I protect the streets, and you guys pick up the streets and throw them at people, you know, or something like along those lines. That's not what he said, but you get the gist. And then they have a battle, a really poorly built battle, in my opinion, actually, with this, like, radioactive thing. and because Green Lantern shoots a single like cooling rod into the chest of this maniac like nuclear robot thing, that one cooling rod causes it to shut off or something. It's a really bad plot, but it turns out that Green Lantern won when like a couple really big superheroes couldn't, and then he talks to them, and you know he's like, it turns out that Batman had brought him on to like keep everybody honest. Even though he wasn't super powerful, he was like, you know, we need you as like a reality check from like the streets, you know, with someone that's like a little bit more mortal than some of these guys that are like flying around in the clouds all day. And after that episode, Batman comes up to him and goes, "Quis custodios ipsos custodes," and he looks at him and says, "Who guards the Guardians?" And he goes, "I got your back." And like that's the end of the episode. But who watches the Watchers, or who will watch the Watchmen, is like another part of it. But it's from 1st to 2nd century Rome is like when it first came out.
Huh.
So like, you know, 1st or 2nd century, like 100 to 200 AD. You know, like we're talking an awfully long time ago. And the quote in the original is, "I hear always the admonishment of friends, bolter and constrainer, but who will guard the Guardians? The wife plans ahead and begins with them." Because of course it's sexist, but the idea is like still that it's really, really cool to have that idea. Like you just kind of like brought that up on your own as one of the points, but like it's a really fair point.
I only really, I mean, this is all about Lil Rocket's speech, but I just want to kind of bring it up because this is what brings the speech up. I remember when she said this a long time ago. I forgot what season she even brings it up, but it is a part about why she wants to be a hero, and she brings up just like how she looks in the streets, how she never really looked at the she always looked at the crowd responding to the hero, but then when she was brought to the attention of the hero, a lot of times, like, you know, either they're smiling just because, you know, people are cheering them on, or but they're not really smiling. She brings up the question about like, what happens if they get in trouble? Who's out there to protect them? And I remember that and Lil Rock is a character that I really like, and I really like her now after this.
She's not used enough, which is disappointing.
Yeah, like
she's like the second least used high potential character after Froppy.
I mean, there was a scene with Froppy on the wall and her talking to Deku, which is kind of funny. But Lil Rocket, like I said before, you know, I really like as the series was going on, I was like, Lil Rocket was becoming a character that I really liked and I really wanted to see more of. And you know, before it was kind of a, you know, like, yeah, she's cool and everything like that from first season, but as the series went on and then her motivation came out, and then what her insecurities were, and then that question, to me, like, there are characters that have really good arcs, and the other one I'm gonna get into in a few minutes here too. But Uraraka, to me, when she asked that question so many seasons ago, about who, you know, as you say, who guards the Guardians, when I first heard that, I was like, why would you ask that question? To me, it was kind of a stupid question to even bring up. And at first I thought it was just a throwaway line, but like obviously it wasn't, because here, after they bring Deku in, the society turns on him. After they learn that All For One is after him, and they're all concerned about their well-being, even though for the longest time the heroes, way before Deku came along, was protecting them, and they didn't have to like reciprocate any of that with a thank you, other than like, yay, you were out there. And then the moment that a hero is in trouble, they turn their back on him, and that's actually a good, you know, that whole Who Guards the Guardians is actually kind of cool. Like, who out there will protect them or stand up for them? So Uraraka going at it.
Are you familiar with the band Train?
The band?
Yeah, the musical band Train.
No, I'm not familiar. Why?
They have a song, I think, called Superman, and it says, "You save me, and I will save the day." Very apropos for what you're talking about. You save me, and I'll save the day.
Yeah, it's actually. Well, I'm glad you're pulling these things out as I'm talking about.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's no problem. But basically, it's kind of cool. She was, you know, I mean, you could take her speech in multitude of ways. You know, like she's fighting for the guy that she loves. She's fighting for a friend. But at the end of the day, she's like, she was speaking to them saying that you gotta at least let him rest here. You can't let him like run ragged out there and die, you know, trying to fix a mess that, you know, he was a part of. And essentially, I mean, that's a very, I'm doing her speech an injustice, and if people really need to go and like, I mean, if there's anything from the show you should probably watch, is that Uraraka speaking to the crowd. I don't know how you would type, you know, but it's like the episode's pretty good. The final episode of season 6, I think. No, I think it's the episode before that. But Point stands, it was a really good speech. It really, to me, really defined her character. If they don't do anything more with her, this is a good point. To just okay, now she's in the background, more in the background than she already was. They could probably do more with her from this point on, because now she's solidified herself to be at least viewing herself as an important person to help Deku out. I thought it was just freaking really cool that she stood up for him, as a, I guess, as in response, because as she's talking about, you know, how they want him to stay here to relax and whatnot inside the school, because the school is being a safe zone for everybody. They flash back to when Deku and Uraraka first met, and it was interesting point of view. Like, I guess some people, I actually listened to other people talking about that scene too, but a lot of people say that Deku saved her at the very first time they met when they were getting involved in the school. I never even thought about that. I always thought about it was Uraraka saving Deku, but I guess actually people are right. Deku's actions in turn helped her get into the school. So this is her paying it back.
He wouldn't have made it after he saved her if she hadn't had the assist too.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, they kind of saved each other in that situation, but yeah, she's kind of paying him back for all of that by saving him so he doesn't go out there and nearly get himself killed. And I mean, Deku, in the first instance that this has actually happened in so many seasons, wails, tears that I had never seen, I think for a couple seasons now. I think he stopped crying after season 2. It was kind of funny. 4 seasons later, he ends up going back to crying again. I was like, oh, that's interesting. He hasn't cried since he stopped earlier on. So it was kind of cool that you know that all happened in terms of her character. Yeah, but I mean, if they stopped using her for anything, I guess this was a good point to send her character off on. Again, character really ripe for fan fiction. But with that, I guess, of character arcs, I want to bring attention to Bakugo. I remember hearing a long time ago that Bakugo mellows the heck out.
I was letting you finish.
What?
I had something I wanted to say about Uraraka, and I was letting you finish. And
oh, sorry. Continue.
It's okay. I wish I could think of what it was, but I had another point to say about it. Go ahead. I'll let you know once you jump into Bakugo if I think of it.
Bakugo. You thought about it yet?
You were gonna move on to Bakugo now.
No, I was saying Bakugo. So you thought about it yet? I was. Do you have an idea like what it was that you're talking about, Rock? That I can help jog your memory.
I'll let you know if it hits me. I'm sorry.
Okay. I apologize to my co-host for that. I didn't mean. I wish he had told me before I jumped in.
I didn't want. I kept interrupting you, and I didn't want to. You were on like a roll, and you talking about something that really meant a lot to you. So I was letting you go. I should have written it down or something. Anyway.
I don't have like 3 more notes of importance.
I do like your point about the crying though, and like her being sort of an inspirational character and jumping in, and she is like one of the few characters I think that are really like Bakugo in that like sort of idealistic, wide-eyed way. Like she was kind of like one of the pure ones from the beginning. Like as much as I talk about Froppy isn't pure so much as like neutral and a team player. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of characters there that are good for sure, but they're not good in the way that Deku is good. They don't have that quite like that pure edge to them, and Uraraka really does. And I think she becomes sort of the voice of that checks Deku when he's going a little too far, you know. So this is what I wasn't. That's not what I was going to say earlier. I just wanted to build on your point. Like, you made a really good point there about that.
I just remembered something about Rocket that I remember actually. I remember thinking about it in the moment that was happening.
Yeah.
My brain. I remember this when she was speaking the speech. I was like, man, um,
Oh, I
I,
remember what I was going to say. Her. Go ahead. Finish yours, and I'll do mine. I'll remember it this time.
I was thinking like she was giving her speech. I was like, man, this would be stupid, but it'd be kind of funny if this was solidifies her becoming #1 hero. Because I remember that going in my mind. I was like, that'd be freaking cool though. That's what happened. But no, I know that's not gonna happen. But it'd be really cool to me. That's what happens. This
What
is
I
a
wanted
dumb
to say
thought.
is it's worth knowing, and your point about her, the point that brought up my purity thing, or got me to this back to where I was. Her speech didn't have to be that friendly. Like, think about the kind of thing Bakugo would have said if he'd gone up there. He would have been like, "Look, you ungrateful bastards! Like, you know, he's been killing himself, running himself ragged to save you. Like, you know what I mean? You're weak and hopeless and blah blah blah." Like, Bakugo would have had a very different conversation going on here, um, for sure. You know, but the point of this is that Urara, like, not only did she do the heroic thing, but like she did this. She turned it into like sort of a selfless conversation. Like, the tone of it was like, you know, like, protect my friend, like, help my friend, like, we're helping you and we're doing all we can, help him. She made it about Deku specifically, rather than saying like, you ungrateful assholes, like, we've been dying in like sloughs for you. You guys have been like treating us like garbage. Like, we're not the villains. You know, the villains were there and we just tried to stop them. You know, what did you guys do? Like, besides scream and run around a lot? Like, she doesn't take like the obvious approach. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's a very good case here to be ticked off at the crowd, you know, rather than um and then the next most selfish thing she could have done was advocate for everybody, you know, and said like, all of us, like, you know what I mean, deserve a place here. Everybody, like, all the heroes deserve to have a sanctuary here as well. You know what I mean? You can't turn these people, but then she doesn't do that. She just says like, this guy in particular really deserves you guys letting him in to stay. And you can do what you want to me and the others, but like, he deserves to be here. And that's kind of like this, the core of her message. Like, and I think it's fantastic that like they made her such a selfless person in that moment. And that's exactly how Deku would have been too, pretty much. Like, he would have thought about the person that needed saving, not about himself, you know? And I think that's what one of the pieces of substance there that makes it so good, that it's, the speech is heroic because there's nothing in it for her except that she loves Deku on whatever level she loves him. You know what I mean? And she wants to help somebody in need. And that is powerful in this case. And I think that's like what makes this especially memorable, that she had that speech, that there's nothing in it for her whatsoever. She gets up in front of everybody and it's just like, please let us keep sacrificing everything for you and let us recover for a second so we have more to give. And him in particular.
I mean, yeah, it was kind of her speech is kind of like a foundational layer for everything that was happening because the society has lost trust in heroes, and Deku being the top, the top of the pyramid in terms of like what's wrong with this world right now, and them getting upset, and her saying that yeah, she gets it. This is a
But
screwed up
think about the
situation.
strength too of character here. Like, this has been a really rough time for heroes. Like, they've had to live with what happened. They've had to live with what they weren't strong enough to do. They've had to live with everybody's anger. They've had to live with the betrayal of the public and the groups that are out there, like the hater, the release of all the work that they did, you know, and putting these guys behind bars and going through pain and personal suffering to not kill them so that they can bring them to justice and put them behind bars instead of being executioners. We've seen even like top 10 heroes like dropping out. We've seen people put in the hospital, like friends dying, like, you know, teachers dying for her. And you see her up there and she's good old Uraraka. Like, she's just like she was in episode 1. Like, you don't see the pain and fatigue and weariness and like discouragement on her face. You see her still like 100% power inside of herself and ready to like inspire the world again. And I think that's a big point too, that like everything about this world right now is pretty much a little bit darker than it was before, except that Uraraka remains a ray of light.
Yeah, this looks really well out. Like I remember liking her like a little bit, but as the series went on, like, I noticed I started liking Uraraka a whole heck of a lot more. I couldn't really put my hand on it why.
You know what I mean? She doesn't change, but like the fact that she doesn't change is the sign of her strength, that she weathered all of this without like a scar, you know? And so did the other Class A people. Like they all came through this, and like there's no other group of anything that's come through this without the losses, that any losses at all. Like they haven't lost anybody in Class A. They haven't had anyone scarred or put in the hospital. Well, they've had people scarred and put in the hospital, but like they haven't had anyone like emotionally discarded except for Deku himself, because he always takes everything on himself.
Yeah,
I think that's what's so inspirational about it, that like she, at the point where everybody's in their darkest hour, has the most morale and the most like joy. You know what I mean? Out of all this, like her resolve is stronger than ever, and she's like, that's what the world needs right now, and that's what she is. So when it said like when you see that statue of All Might that they keep showing, where he's like, I am not here. It's important to remember that like he is here in a different way, you know?
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like that was really good. I never thought about it like that, but I was like, yeah, that's But yeah, I really Uraraka is definitely top of the list of characters I like a lot more than I initially started. And yeah, it's probably because she hasn't changed. And also, I guess another thing, as the last little bit I will say about her is that she's discovered what she wants to do, hero work wise. At least from the looks of it, she's discovered a way to manifest what she's wanted to ask all this time, in a really dark time in the world that they're living in right now. You know, so she's discovered who will help the heroes, and she's managed to rally the civilians this time around to be the ones to provide at least one hero right now shelter. I mean, it's funny too. It was the one guy that spoke out there. All that was the one guy that Deku talked to. I think it was episode 1 of season 1. The when Kamui Woods was like, I guess, doing his hero work on the street. I remember that guy was actually talking to Deku back when Deku didn't have an ability.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if he remembers him. It probably doesn't really matter, but the fact that he's the one that spoke up first and, you know, say, yeah, we probably should really hear them out. You know, it was really cool that he was the first person that should, you know, after all that Uraraka said, he was the one to say something first. I guess speaking of characters and development and arcs, Bakugo, I think, needs special attention here. Now we all know Bakugo was, I at the end of the day, I think Bakugo was a hard pill to swallow, in terms of like likability. But I remember, I said this before, I've gone on record for saying it's like Bakugo is a really weird character, and in terms of like, he's supposed to be the arrogant, you know, a-hole of the group, you know, who's all talk and no show. But that wasn't Bakugo. He had an attitude, but he had a reason to have that attitude. And very rarely do you have characters that are like that. Typically, if they are that way, they are the joke of the show. And Bakugo still somehow maintained being the joke, kind of. But he's also shown that, you know, when things get down to it, he can and will kick your butt. And what's made Bakugo such an interesting character to follow isn't his abilities, it's his character. He has probably been one of the characters that's been evolving slowly throughout the course of the show, and a lot of that development came when All Might retired, trying to save him. we saw a lot of vulnerability from him that you probably weren't expecting to see. And it reminded you that he was a kid. What I want to say is
But
Bakugo's
especially
apology.
in this big moment with Deku when he's like, you know, all this time I've been doing this to like, what did he say? Like, what was his confession to Deku about this when he said like this whole
Yeah,
time?
Bakugo's apology. It was definitely clearly heartfelt, and I say this because he wasn't yelling. It was probably the only time in the entire show that he was speaking at normal volume.
Yeah. You gotta picture him like going through a drive-through and being like, "I want a double cheeseburger, you asshole."
But if I remember correctly, Bakugo said that I'm gonna just this is all being pulled out of the thin air. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I got the gist of it. He said essentially that he spent his time bullying Deku because he basically it sounded like he didn't completely, because I mean this I'm also pulling from what he said earlier to All Might in a backstory episode when he saved him. You know, when his body moved on his own, he had a hard time understanding why somebody with no quirk could be smiling, still wanted to be a hero. He wanted to make a difference. You know, hold on, let me just pull the episode real quick so I just. It made it seem like he was bullying Deku to keep him away from him, so he didn't have to deal with him in a really weird. I'm gonna find this out real quick. I'm gonna see the apology. The apology was something that wasn't expected, but it was necessary. Like he needed to hear it he needed to hear it. Is the best way to put it.
It's around 12:50 and Deku class versus Class A.
12:50.
Around 12:50-ish, yeah, 12 minutes and 50 seconds-ish. I think is where we get to see Bakugo. Yeah. Maybe 13. No.
Oh, here it is. I think I see it.
Yeah, that's roughly the area though.
Okay, 1 minute. Just trying to refresh my memory. He brings the fact that his body moved in order to save Deku, which, by the way, was also another shocking move from Bakugo. He looked down on him because he was quirkless. You were obviously way behind me, but I felt like you were way ahead of me too. I didn't like it. Oh wow, I forgot that they actually had a moment they were talking. It seemed like they were both little kids, and Deku was still battered, like really beat up, even as a little kid. Jeez.
That's probably why Endeavor likes him so much. Sorry.
Okay, I'm not gonna like listen to the entirety of the entire apology, but basically it sounds like he didn't completely understand Deku at all, as typically as a bully. It's something they didn't like and they felt threatened. Essentially, he looked at Deku as a quirkless nobody, but for whatever reason, he still felt like Deku was leagues ahead of him, even back when Deku didn't have a quirk. So, as an attempt to remedy the situation versus saying how he felt, he just bullied Deku to the point where hopefully Deku was going to leave him alone. Unfortunately, that didn't work. Deku kept coming back. And as soon as he got the UA, he's like, you know, nothing went his way. And it's kind of a humbling situation. Again, character development in a very weird, interesting way. Again, he's still a kid. Which I guess is a really interesting thing, I guess, to really tackle on Bakugo is like, you know, he is a jerk, but I guess we also got to keep on remember that he is just a kid. Like everybody else that is going to UA, he's learning. Again, though, it's kind of weird that Bakugo, the entirety of the show, this is the one moment where he's using his inside voice.
As he screams to him across the sky, but yeah.
But it's like he's like apologizing to him, saying that, you know, like ultimately, I guess what really, rounds us all up is that you've done nothing wrong. Everything you've done with the quirk has been superior. I think he even says chosen one. I
You were
think,
the chosen one.
but he kept on
You were
saying after he
supposed
found out
to
about
bring us
Deku's
that
ability.
destroy it. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. I mean, oh, he even calls him Izuku. He actually calls him by his first name, and that's also another shuck in development. He just flat out says, "I'm sorry for everything," which is something I will say that you would never have seen Vegeta done that, at least not until much later. Even though I don't think Vegeta's really apologized to Goku for anything.
Do you remember that scene where what was it, in the Buu saga or something, where Goku goes, "Vegeta's crying? Oh, now I know he's serious," or something like that? What movie was that in that he says that? It's in Dragon Ball Z.
But there's a movie where he says he's
There's an
crying.
episode where Goku goes, "Vegeta's crying? Now I know he's serious."
The only
Or it
time I
might have been
remember
more
Vegeta
like the one of
crying,
"Now I know we're screwed" or something like that. But
the only time I remember Vegeta crying and it was around Goku was during the Frieza arc when Vegeta had bared his soul to Goku as he was dying. I mean, it was one of those like really ambiguous things that he was saying that he made it seem like Frieza was the reason why he was the way he was, but no one knows that
so
for sure.
later in the episode, around 1640, Deku says, "When Stain stabbed me, do you remember stabbed you? Do you remember what I said?" And he says, "No, I don't." He says, "I said I don't try to win by yourself." There was more to that. My body moved in its own, and then I got stabbed. And I thought I should tell you, because he's talking about when he throws himself in the way of the shot from Shigaraki. "I looked down on you your whole lives because of your quirklessness. You were obviously way behind me," and that's the part you brought up. Sorry. Okay.
Now, I was talking about that
But
entire thing. I was just saying that, like, Bakugo clearly, it was one of those situations where Bakugo, I mean, I could wrap this up to saying that, I mean, it's probably, I'm doing it a
it's so
disservice, but I say, like,
it's such a throwback, because that's exactly what Deku said when he went to save Bakugo. He said, "My body moved on its own." And here you have Bakugo saying, "My body moved on its own." And you see like the hero arc kind of complete right there. That's like if we're equating him to Dragon Ball Z, that's like the episode where they wish all the good people back in Dragon Ball Z, and Vegeta appears, and they're like, "Oh, I guess the verdict's out." um, Deku saved Bakugo. Like, not that he needed saving in the same way that some of the other ones didn't, but like he brought him out of his shell, and he also changed his heart so that when there was danger, he acted on instinct. He didn't think his way through. That Bakugo is very much a thinking, strategic person here, but this time he did it out of heart. He said, "I threw myself in the way because my body moved on its own, because that's just what I'm made up of, you know."
it's kind of interesting. I guess something I remember thinking about that, but I guess like I was talking so fast, I kind of glossed over it. But yeah, I mean, Deku, like Bakugo paid him back twice actually for saving him from that slime guy, who funnily enough we never seen again.
Wouldn't it be funny if he showed up in one of the cities and they had to
That'd be really, really weird, but I guess it'd be kind of funny. But yeah, it was like one of those. But I
one of the
guess
prison breakouts.
it's kind of cool that like you talking about those parallels. Like it's kind of cool that like Deku's trying to get away. He's kind of talking like Bakugo. You're like you guys are way too far behind me. And it's like one of those things you think Bakugo would be saying as he's trying to get away, but it's like, Bakugo making sure that he can't get away. Like, I mean, Bakugo, even before he even says anything directly to Deku, he's like, "There's things I gotta tell you that you need to hear from me." And I was like, that's interesting. It's like, Bakugo was talking in a way that you normally wouldn't hear him. Normally talk is like, clearly, like Deku has had effect on him. It's like,
so touching too when Bakugo, like when Deku collapses and Bakugo rushes forward to catch him, and everybody else is standing in the background watching. It's a really touching. He's almost tender with him when he catches him when he falls.
I mean, Bakugo senses that Deku is hurting, like, and it's probably it's probably interesting in a situation because I know out of everybody in that group that is like known Deku, Bakugo has known him the longest. You know, whether he wanted to or not, he is the person that's known Deku the longest, and and as the hero arc really continues and completes itself, Bakugo literally gives like Deku like the highest honor of like respect he can give him, which is calling him by his actual name. He spent the entirety of the show calling him Deku as an insult.
Hmm.
So it's kind of interesting too. It's like he bestows upon him that you deserve to be called by your name, even though later on he kind of like fumbles with it. You know, after everything's been said and done, he still almost calls him Deku, but then tries to fix it by calling him Izuku. But then Izuku's like, you know, you can just call me Deku because I'm gonna keep calling you Kachan. But yeah, I mean, hmm?
He's like, you idiot.
but yeah, like I mean, their whole relationship's kind of gotten better. It's like like I said before, like Bakugo from the very beginning of the show, you would have never thought this is where he would end up. But a lot of the situations, a lot of the tropes that I thought he was gonna fall into, he didn't really fall into. I mean, some of them he probably did, but like not all of them. Like being the guy who's not good at anything, even though he claims to be good. I mean, Bakugo clearly is a very talented. His character is not something I'm used to seeing. Like a very aggressive guy who, you know, claims to be the best in the world, but it isn't. Bakugo, he's not the greatest, but he's much better than you expect a character and his archetype would be. He's still got a long way to go, especially with his talent, because he can still grow. Yeah, I mean, all my said that he still got potential to grow into. But yeah, like Bakugo is like, yeah, I really like his character by the end of all this. I mean, yeah, I mean, it took some time to get here, but like, I mean, I heard that he mellows out. I got to this point, I was like, good gracious, yeah, they're right, he definitely mellows out. He's still himself, but like, he's like not as like in your face about it.
I'm a fan.
Okay, I got two more things here. One of them, I guess you kind of already talked about, is Deku coming into his own abilities. Like this entire arc was like his like Jakku hospital incident with, you know, all the heroes kind of getting, you know, smacked and everything. Deku showing that, you know, he's unlocking his abilities and he's getting more proficient with them. He hasn't unlocked them all yet. I don't think he's used number 1 yet. Number 2. He's got Fudgen. He's got Smokescreen.
I mean, he's got to have gone to the bathroom with a number 2 at least once.
Dang it.
Wow.
Wow.
What I thought was especially useful was that Deku was not necessarily that he was getting new powers, but he was learning to use them in tandem with each other. And that was, I thought, the big sign there. Like when he fights Lady Azuru, is that her name?
Lady Nagat?
I'm sorry, Lady Nagat. When he fights Lady Nagat, he starts using his powers together and not just as like separate weapons. And I thought that was really when he took it to the next evolution. Everything else there I thought was almost like his Shigaraki moment, where Shigaraki fights Gigantomachina and goes like months, you know, or a month or whatever, hardly without sleep and pushing himself to the limit and everything else. That's sort of like his Shigaraki moment where he goes through that dark test and proves himself worthy, because they have so many parallels between the two characters in the series, but this struck me as like his test that he got through and he got pulled out. And they both, like, it's not fair to say he got bailed out by his friends, because he, in the other one, like, Shigaraki had to stop before he was completely done too, didn't he?
I guess.
I think Shigaraki was pulled away from what he was doing. I don't think he defeated Gigantomachina in the end. I think he got pulled away and had to do something else. And then when he did something else, like, it was through that he like kind of came full circle. But so Deku being like pulled away here doesn't really matter that much anyway. Plus, the only ones that were ultimately able to take him down were his friends. So you see him like taking out all these big like enemies, and then there's almost that symbolic fight with the puppet master guy when you really think about it, because he's a puppet master, and who's more of a puppet master than All for One anyway. And so you see like sort of a nutshell version of that fight where like he's a puppet master, he's fighting a puppet master that controls the public, and the public comes to defeat him. And you see that like no single big enemy can defeat him, but like the public ganging up on him and him not being able to fight them turned it into a psychological battle, and he wouldn't hurt them, and that's what took him down. And then you see him come to the UA later and have a very similar situation where the puppet master is no longer accessible, but it's not the heroes that made that situation. It was the orchestration of All for One that created that situation where everybody hated them. And by nurturing that seed of dissent and bringing it out, like in everything else. So you have like that puppet master where he fights that, and then you have the situation later on where he meets people in the real life that are being controlled sort of by a puppet master. And then he, in the end of that fight, it's ambiguous that he couldn't have done that. He maybe could have gotten through that on his own, but it's his friends that come and save him. And then he goes right to UA and has almost the same experience, because ultimately it's his friends who save him again.
Yeah, I mean, Deku coming into his own here was like, I mean, that entire situation was obviously, like you said, it was his Shigaraki moment, showing that he, if he's not there yet, he is very close to being able to be able to fight against All for One. I don't think he's used the last ability. I think there's one guy that hasn't, and I think it's the guy with the gray hair or silver hair, what do you want to call it? The other guy who I don't think is actually talked with Deku yet. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting that he was able to start using his abilities in tandem. I guess the other thing I want to bring up here too, this is kind of been with Deku in episode 1. I noticed that people like in this world typically view quirks in various different lights. Like, some people view them as useful, some people view them as like useless. Deku, and it might just come from the fact that Deku didn't have an ability when he was born, but like no matter what the ability was, he always like looked at it with awe, like it was like, the best thing ever. He always found the usefulness in a lot of abilities, and a part of it was like the whole him writing them things down in a book, which he stopped, unfortunately, much earlier on. But the usefulness of each quirk that he ever came across, he always wrote down like everything about the quirk that was possible in a book, so he can have it in his knowledge for later. I think that bled into the quirks that that came in One for All, where he was able to find usefulness for every single quirk. Like nothing in his arsenal was useless per se. Everything had a use. Even the smoke screen. Like, I mean, he utilized smoke screen to the best of his ability actually, and it helped him be able to sneak up on people.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when Danger Sense
failed. That's the first
failed.
time he's seen the usefulness of a smoke screen either, because Mustard had a version of that.
I guess that's true. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's kind of like bled into his abilities, his skill set. Like, he's capable of seeing the usefulness in everything. Even the smallest thing could be useful. But
and what a cool thing for him, who's never had a quirk before but had such an academic interest in them, to suddenly get to that point, where he could like be his own little library of quirks.
I guess it's interesting as well. Actually, I thought about it. I mean, yeah, he's in a definite interesting situation. Okay, I was trying to find a good spot to put this in, but I guess this is a good place to wrap it up. All Might and Stain's relationship, and I'll probably also include just All Might in general, as a topic. For the most part, after All Might had his like little last stand hurrah, All Might has, as you said, been taking a back seat. A lot of the action, he hasn't really been useful, ever since he used the last bit of his power. But I want to bring up that it was kind of interesting during this whole like Deku being rogue thing. There was a scene where All Might was keeping up with Deku, because he had promised Deku's mother that he was going to protect him. during the whole, he was like his Alfred. Uh, he was driving, and apparently some people who didn't know who he was at the time, before when they, stopped his car from moving, some people with some lightning pole abilities or whatever, uh, when they realized who he was, and they got afraid, but only realized somebody realized that he didn't have his abilities, so he was like powerless. It was really interesting in this situation. It was kind of interesting to see All Might in a predicament that at first he didn't think he could get himself out of. But it was cool to see that All Might still had that like spark, that a presence about him, that even in his frail body he could still exude, and it would scare people.
Yeah, right.
It was like the best thing. It was so cool to see that even in his frail body that he could still make people afraid of him, and that's like I didn't think he was capable of. But yeah, I mean, it was to me, it was a cool moment for him that I didn't expect to see. I never expected him to throw All Might in a situation where he had to get out without punching his way out. So like, his presence is still there. He still got it. I mean, even though he doesn't have an ability. But again, I guess it isn't too shocking that people who don't have powers can still be useful. I mean, we look at Lumillion. The man lost his ability in the middle of his fight and still managed to win.
Yeah, but I mean, All Might's lost almost all the use of his body. Like when he shows himself to Stain, he goes poof poof, and then he like coughs blood just from like switching over to that, whatever that form is, whether it's real or not.
Yeah, that's true. I guess we're speaking of Stain, like, you bring up earlier on in this discussion about like how you don't forget about characters. Stain's probably the ultimate example of this. He's been like, I remember when I didn't know it was him at first when I first watched the episode where he got out of jail. I didn't realize that was him until you brought it up. I was like, oh wait a minute, that's freaking Stain. And then you see later on he's been in the background, and they know he got out, but they don't know where he's been. I think they even bring this up to like Stain got out, but we haven't seen a hide no hair of him. It's kind of cool that Stain, something happened to him, but Stain got out of jail, got his gear back, tracked down, I think Deku first, and then left him after a certain point. I couldn't imagine. I don't know if he tracked him down or not, but I feel like he might have. But then tracked down All Might, who then he had a conversation with. Because All Might at this point was feeling pretty useless, only to be pep talked by Stain. He had a heart-to-heart with the hero killer, who then pretty much says, once this is all done, I want you to kill me. And I was like, wow. But I think the main reason, like, him wanting a peaceful society, it's kind of weird, like, when you really think about Stain, because I guess Stain wasn't really a bad guy as much as a bad guy could be. He just thought the world was messed up, and he thought the best way to do it was to kill, the false heroes.
What's the line there between him and the other hero killer?
What?
Well, I mean, where do you draw the line there anyway? Like between him and the other hero killer?
What other hero killer?
Lady Nagat, is that it? I'm like scrolling rapidly to try to get Lady Nagat. Like, where do you draw the line there?
Well, he's doing his own free will. She was hired to do so, and kind of forced.
Well, not really. Like, she was a hero killer in the first place, right?
No, I mean, her job was to. It wasn't really killing heroes. It was only just culling people from. Her main goal, her main job was her main
hero killer.
I don't think she was called a hero killer.
Well, that's why she was in that prison, not for like being a hero. That was the whole point.
Well, she had a psychotic break after like the organization that she thought was,
We don't know how Stain started out, but he's definitely got some psychotic characteristics.
No, we all kind of have Stain. I mean, it kind of show. He kind of tell you, like, he went to. I think it's like he went to some kind of educational program or something like that. I think he wanted to be a hero. but he found out, like, he found something out, and it installed doing this, and it turned him. Just the underbelly of the Hero Society. Again, we're hearing about a lot about the underbelly of the Hero Society.
Sometimes you just gotta be the Stain you want to see in the world, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it was kind of cool that Stain kind of like, again, looked like a Ninja Turtle, but that's not a bad thing. I like Ninja Turtles. I'm just saying that, you know, Stain's design.
The canon Ninja Turtles, not the cartoon.
Huh?
They looks like the canon Ninja Turtles, not the cartoon. The comic book Ninja Turtles from the original series before the cartoon was out. It looks more like that. Did you know about that? Like, the original Ninja Turtle comic was like really edgy and like sketchy and stuff like that.
I mean, I heard that some things had to change, is kind of how it became a kids cartoon. But I mean, I think I heard about some of the little things that, you know, it was bloody and people did die, which makes sense. I mean, they're using they're using sharpened tools, but Leonardo's got a freaking sword for crying out loud.
There was a much more serious toned comic in the originals.
Well, I haven't gone back to reading yet, but I'm in the middle of reading the Ronin. Is it? Right here. Yeah, the last Ronin. I'm actually in the middle of reading that. Just actually have it here. I guess actually, yeah, it kind of does look like the original. Gritty and everything. Good gracious. Yep, never mind. But it was kind of cool to see Stain come back. I guess we kind of always knew he was gonna come back, considering that they just put him in jail. You know, it was just only a matter of time before he got out, or something happened where they were gonna need him. But it's cool, like, Stain kind of filled a purpose that we didn't know we needed, because apparently it was getting, like, the secret documentation for what's going on with the League of Villains into the hands of the hero. But he only wanted to give it to All Might, because, again, he only trusted All Might. Stain as a character was, like, really interesting. Honestly, I wouldn't have minded if maybe there was some, like, side, you know, comic with him involved. Again, a character that's ripe for freaking fanfic. They could take him, they could take him and then, like, just put him in his own little adventure, possibly become an anti-hero. I don't think there's any anti-heroes in there. He's probably the closest one to it. Yeah, he probably is the closest to it.
But he's definitely the lead anti-hero.
I think he's the only anti-hero now I'm thinking about it. Unless we're gonna consider Nagant one, but I don't know if we consider Nagant one.
I would consider Nagant one, especially by the end of the story arc.
Yeah.
I still think Spinner's on his way to being an anti-hero. Or, like, at least a redemption. There's at least a redemption arc going there, I think. I'm very, like... I really don't think that they're done with Spinner. I think they've been saving Spinner and they're not done with him.
I've seen hints they're not done with Toga either. And from what I've seen, thank you, Google. I haven't seen anything from the manga or anything like that. I'm just saying from what the small words I've actually been reading, it sounds like there's like a huge story plot point with her at some point. I don't know what it's supposed to be. I remember seeing a headline that Toga got really screwed over by the quirk singularity. I don't even know what that means. So I mean, again, we don't really know much about her story other than her life was pretty bad. Her parents treated her like garbage. So everybody else. But
does it ever count as an anti-hero?
He started out as a vigilante. Honestly, he probably could have gone through the route of the anti-hero and then became a hero, quote unquote.
No, I feel confident that if I thought about it a little bit, I would think of another anti-hero in there, but Stain is definitely the iconic one at the very least.
I didn't even think about it, because I was trying to figure where the heck this Stain fit in and everything, because he's not a villain. He's not a hero.
He's a great Jedi.
I don't know why it took so long for me to think about it, but yeah, he is the anti-hero. Um, but it makes sense in the world of heroes. There's got to be somebody out there who's just jaded by it all. But that's all I have to really say. I mean, everything was pretty good. I enjoyed the season.
Again, Stain's turn could be also, since Stain represents a little bit of the core of what's going on in these stories. I feel like Stain is another indicator, like, of the build-up that they're doing to whatever happens in the next season. So you have, like, when the trend was going downwards away from heroes, you had Stain at the top of that, making it more extreme. And now that the trend seems like it might be moving in favor of the heroes again, with people saying, like, you know, will we get it back? And him saying, I will, you know, make it come back. Like, we're gonna get it back. Deku says that 2 different times, like, he promises that we'll get it back. And I think Deku doesn't repeat himself very often. I think that's important that he repeated it. Like, the show wanted you to remember that he'd said it at least one of those times. But Stain, if he's a representative of the trends, him swaying back over to, like, helping the heroes and being against the villains kind of could be seen as a good sign for where the story is headed, you know, where the people's hearts are right now.
I mean, having Stain on their side
Stain has
would
looked
be
at
good.
the heroes now and decided that they're worth helping again. You know, instead of straight up killing them and trying to bring justice to the world in his own way. If Stain can believe in them, it's hard to think that the rest of the people can't believe in them.
I mean, I believe, you know, the side is going to go back to normal. I just don't know how it's going to happen. I mean, the world's in shambles, and it got into shambles real quick. It wasn't like a slow
This is a
effect.
horrible thing. This is a horrible thing to say, but it's like all we know for sure is that Japan is in shambles.
Wow. Okay. I think we're gonna end the podcast with that.
The rest of the world seems to have heroes to spare by the end of this episode.
Okay. I hate to leave on that last note of Japan being in shambles, even though I gotta have to agree. But well, whenever they do season 7, there are 3 more arcs left. The last arc is actually in progress in the manga. I don't know what they're planning to do. We'll probably find out possibly by July what their plan is.
Is the anime over after that? Like, is that it?
But once the manga is done and they animate everything in the manga, yeah, it's done. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say that Studio Bones possibly won't try to get the rights to try to maybe make more, but I highly doubt they will without the blessing of the original creator. So I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
The only other thing My Hero Academia related is the thing I brought up with Vigilantes. That side series that ended some time ago, like way before this one. And it was really liked, and there was I think there was a petition out there for them to get that animated. So shoot, when that's over, I don't know what the plan is for this podcast, because I kind of named it after My Hero Academia. In hindsight, I probably should have thought of something a little bit more creative, but I mean, I enjoyed the name. I don't think it'll go anywhere, as I'm feeling at the moment when everything is said and done. But yeah, we ended season 6. I enjoyed everything. I mean, it got dark this season for sure. I mean, it definitely got dark. I always said it was getting darker, but I mean, this particular season was probably where things got dark, and not even in a this is really messed up situation. It's more like, the world tone, literally kind of went down as the trust in the heroes kind of went down. But yeah, I can't wait for season 7. I mean, they didn't call it the series finale, which is the weird thing, because I've been looking at the wording. But my suspicion is that season 7 is the last season, because there's 3 more arcs left for them to animate. Though I don't know how long the next arc is supposed to be, because I think it's titled The UA Traitor. So who knows how long that is. And I actually unfortunately know about something It's not even story. It's not even story really, unless you consider Invisible Girl's actual parents' plot. Um,
Hmm.
there's been a huge controversy when it was revealed what she looked like, and it wasn't because of how she looked. It was because apparently she's on the cover of one of the mangas, and she's nude, and I
Is
feel
that
like it was
visible? Is she
understood
already?
that she was nude,
Hmm.
but people probably really took it because she's underage. But at the same time, it's like I thought it was understood that when she was invisible, she was nude. So I don't know what they're gonna do with that. If that is even in that arc, I don't know if it is. But I remember it was a big deal when it happened. I don't remember what she looked like. I think I saw a cover once and immediately forgot. I don't know if I was traumatized, so I'll find out when it comes up.
I'm looking in images to see if it looks like they draw her as like a sexy blonde with blonde hair, sexy blonde with big boobs.
I mean, the big boobs thing was kind of a given considering one of the seasons, the gun dude actually elbowed her in the boob.
It's like greenish blonde hair.
I mean, we'll find out what I don't know. Like, people apparently it was a big deal when she showed up on the thing, and people really got upset with it. So I don't know what they're gonna do with the. I know they're gonna probably tread on thin ice with that one when they do get around to it. Uh, and speaking about it, we haven't seen her
But
until like
she's not actually nude. Like that's not actual porn in it. I mean, she's nude, but like look at the magazine cover. She's not like there's nothing R-rated there. This is like I don't think this is any worse than like the last episode when like 4 or 5 of the characters are naked and throw Deku in the bath. I think somebody might have been overreacting a little, basically.
I think maybe what they wanted is because she was visible here, they should just put clothes on her. I don't know.
But you see what I mean? Like she's not. They're not drawing her naked in Jump Comics like they've got. I mean, unless she's nude inside there or something like that. But I seriously doubt that she spends like more than a couple panels tops in some version of nudity that like is censored. You
I
know.
still want to know why she's visible because I thought she was stuck invisible.
I'm guessing that somebody found something that neutralizes powers or something.
I guess we'll find out. I mean, I think I remember seeing
Because
this,
you
and
can
I
steal
remember not
powers.
really
People have had
being.
their powers.
I remember not
People
really
have had
be.
their powers stolen. So I mean, if you can steal powers, you can probably do other things with powers, right?
I mean, I guess. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. I think I remember seeing this. I remember thinking it's not that bad. I mean, they covered up her nipples, and she's clearly sitting in a situation where her hands are between her legs, so it's like you can't really see anything
Yeah.
other than
Plus,
skin
she's got gloves and boots on, so she's not completely nude.
or her torso and her abdomen and
I mean, the foot fetish guys are probably, you know, like
oh dear. Okay, we're gonna end it
disappointed.
here. Thank you guys for watching. The next podcast we
Hey
do.
guys,
I had to stop you there before we go any further. I'm sorry. Um, but the next bit we already have it, you know, locked and blocked. The next anime we're gonna watch is Chainsaw Man. We'll go back to weekly for that. I think there's 12 episodes, so we'll probably be on it for 2 months or so. It won't be long, but
that's what she said.
uh, and then I think what we'll do is instead of going on a hiatus again, which I know we won't be doing for this year, I think maybe we'll just review a movie. Got a couple of anime movies I'm trying to watch. My Hero's one of them, in Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super as well. We'll probably maybe once a month that I haven't decided 100% yet, but it's something we'll probably do once Chainsaw Man is done. But
Did you decide against Vox Machina?
I've been needing to watch one episode and I haven't like I don't know D&D into a show. It doesn't appeal to me, and it's really weird because I haven't gone all the way to you know I'm gonna watch this. I've been meaning to, but haven't yet. Um,
You haven't even watched one episode, right?
yeah, I haven't even watched one episode. And I mean,
I think you're
almost
gonna. I think it's not gonna be what you think. there's definitely like when I watched it, I didn't know it was D&D, and I immediately identified it as at least being D&D inspired because they're using elements of D&D in it. But like at the same time, like I don't think it's what you think it is. But we can find out.
At some point, I mean, I know. So I watch one episode. I gotta find some time. I keep on
I
saying it.
haven't.
I keep on
I haven't
saying
finished
I'm gonna
watching it.
watch it during the weekend, and I
Wait, you
don't.
said you have watched one episode now?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
I've
Yeah.
been meaning to watch one episode, but I've been keeping telling myself I'm gonna do it during the weekend, and I don't because I'm stuck doing other things. Either I'm like playing a game with Sis, or I'm trying to work through another game I'm playing. It's not. I'm trying to watch things while playing games now, so I was like, I should probably pop one on Vox next month. I had to figure it out.
No. You treat it like it sounds like it's a drug or something. You gotta pop me a Vox.
See you guys next time. We're reviewing Chainsaw Man episode 1. See you then.
See you guys.